Welcome everyone to the Transit Asset Management Group Plan training. I'm going to walk through with you today the purpose, structure, implementation of the group plan. This session is designed to help you understand the group plan and help guide the participation in the upcoming update. I am Brian Waterman with HDR in our Tallahassee office. Actually, I'm working from home today. That's why the camera is not perfect because my wife had me to do stuff around the house today and deal with a sick animal. So with that said, I'm going to go through this. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. I think you'll find the approach we have laid out will help create a very productive, fair, and equitable plan. So let's jump in. So kind of walk through what we're going to do. I'm going to review the TAM requirements, discuss and be able to tools and resources, the next steps of the agency. The Transit Asset Management Plan, or TAM, is essential for infrastructure stability, reliability, and smart decisions. The main goal here is to understand your role in the group plan so you can contribute effectively. So what is a TAM plan? So basically any agency receiving federal funds must produce a transit asset management plan. Basically, it's a list of any asset over $50,000 in value, ranging from your vehicles to service equipment to buildings. I don't think anybody's operating rail in this call today. We are updating the 2023 plan, focusing on the Tier 2 assets. And of course, Tier 2 agencies are those who operate less than 100 vehicles in peak operations. Updates are required every 4 years. So this one is due October 2027, which is why we are starting it now. So we have it done in time to address any comments. Oh, I'm sorry, in time for October 2027. So there are some key definitions. I'm sure you got over some of them already in the meeting this morning, but I'll revisit them. Not again. The big one is accountable executive. They are responsible for implementing TAM practices. They sign off on things. This needs to be somebody in your organization where in the job description it says accountable executive. Sponsor NDOT, Nebraska DOT sponsor develops and coordinates the group plan. Assets include rolling stock, facilities, equipment, and infrastructure, which does not apply. It's more on the rail side. The main thing here is state of good repair. The idea is that assets perform at their intended level. It's kind of a real backstory why we have the group plan why we have the TAM plans. For years, agencies were getting federal dollars, but they are not maintaining their infrastructure. So FTA says, fine, if you want to be in good standing, you've got to make sure your infrastructure is up to date and delivering consistent, reliable service. Actually jumps into that. So why transit asset management? The TAM helps to monitor conditions, performance, especially for smaller providers. A Tier 2 plan, which is what we're creating here, includes the asset inventory, condition assessment, decision support tool, and investment prioritization. NDOT will sponsor the plan to help the agencies comply with federal regulations. Keep going. So who are the participants? Again, we've gone over this thing as the sponsors, of course, Nebraska DOT, but we must include any sub-recipients of 5311 rural funds. Let's do this thing. So sponsors include those direct and designated recipients of FTA funds with at least one sub-recipient. Participants that do not also receive 5307 funds. If you receive 5307 funds, you have to ask to join a group plan, but you're not included automatically. Tribal agencies who receive 5311C funds. However, the sponsor is not required to solicit. They must reach out to Nebraska DOT. If you are a 5307 recipient, again, you're not obligated to be in a group plan. If you want to be, you have to opt in. And 5310 recipients, but only if you are providing public transportation. So if you're not providing public transportation but receiving $5310, you do not have to participate you do not participate in a group plan. So basically, everyone on this call who is eligible, some by right because you don't receive 5307, and some if you choose to opt in. There will be an email at this thing at the end where you're going to say whether you opt in or opt out. So then we'll get that towards when we get at that slide. So kind of the key participants, components of a group plan are the asset condition, which is kind of the inventory first, which is register of all the capital assets, inventory information about those assets. The condition, which is kind of the rating of its physical status, enough information to monitor and predict performance. A support structure that indicates how we're going to prioritize, what our decision making will be in that regard, and estimating the capital needs to meet those requirements, and then a prioritization, a list of priorities project and how assets are going to be replaced over the life of the TAM plan. The prioritization ranks the projects to ensure limited resources are allocated effectively. These elements work together to create a comprehensive and actual plan that guides agencies in maintaining their state of good repair assets. Understanding these components is essential for providing meaningful, insightful data for the group plan. So let's go more detail here into the performance measures. Equipment, typical is age. I'll get into a little more detail in a second here, but again, it's the idea is you're looking at percent of non-revenue vehicles to have reached the extended their useful life benchmark. Rolling stock, again, default is age. We'll get more detail in a second. You're already asking questions about what mileage. I'll get there. Again, the percent of those vehicles pass their ULB. In facility condition, though, the assets are related below a 3 on the term scale. I go again. Next slide will follow up more specifically. So starting with useful life benchmark, there is FTA does not know what the left hand and what the right hander is doing. I say this because we've gone through this slide a couple times internally and with Nebraska DOT. If you read the NTD reporting manual, their default condition is age for useful life benchmark. That is also, if you Google, if you look at FTA ULB cheat sheet, they give you age. However, there is circulars out there, some pretty old and some more recent, that do have a mileage consideration. So we give, so both is to consider here. The idea here is to try to come up with a benchmark that roughly matches about 2.5 rating on the term scale. The ULBs vary by vehicle type and helps determine when things need to be replaced. And I'll get, and so just basic on the screen here is what the benchmark is by type and by years and mileage. So, okay. So there are pros and cons to using a year-based or mileage-based. One second here. Make sure. Year-based ULBs are for simplicity, predictable asset replacement, and typically align with grant cycles and FTA benchmarks. However, they don't reflect the wear and tear and may lead to either premature asset replacement when such as a vehicle that reaches ULB but still has not been used to its full mileage. And again, those aren't daily things. Mileage based does factor in wear and tear and supports data-driven decisions, and it's ideal for, again, demand response systems or high utilization fleets. However, it requires robust tracking, can be costly, and really makes prioritization challenging. So in other words, it's easy to predict when a vehicle is going to reach a useful life benchmark by age, and we can program it in that, hey, we bought a vehicle this year, we know in 5 years it'll be replaced. Mileage is harder because now we are relying on you, the agency, to do accurate reporting on the mileage so we can keep track of it and stuff. It may lead to less of a programmatic replacement, but a lot in 1 year and a few in the next. With that said, there are agencies that have either provide both. And there certainly is a benefit to a hybrid approach. So FTA does allow you to provide your own methodology for your prioritization. You can be flexible. You just have to document it, run by your region. They'll typically approve it. So you can do that. A hybrid approach does improve equity and accuracy in asset replacement and for fleets of varied useful patterns. Again, we have to document it and get approval for this methodology, and it allows for better capital planning. So what we may do is we could do a simple either or, which is, again, agencies across the country have done that. One approach may be we may prioritize age, but have a multiplier for mileage if you reach a certain benchmark above the approved mileage. We won't know what the best approach is until we see all the assets and look at it. I can tell you now, we'll take it into consideration. It will be most likely be some sort of hybrid approach we develop. So we just got to look at the data, look at the funding streams, and see what works best for both your usage and as funding comes in. So that's probably any questions on that so far. Okay. Not seeing any, I'm going to jump to facilities. So if you do have a capital building, admin building, operations, maintenance, or a transfer center, or any tangible physical asset, they're rating on a TAM scale, which is based off structural integrity of the systems, ADA compliance, modernization. The ratings guide maintenance and replacement decisions as score below 3 requires attention. And so you can get an idea here on the scale here what it looks like, with a 5 being it's brand new, no issues there, all the way down to 0 meaning it is out of service and needs to be replaced right away. One strategy for this is to typically buildings have a 40-year life cycle, is to budget, divide the cost of that building over the course of 4 years and kind of budget in. So Megan Smith's got a question here. Let me read up here. So if your meets mileage requirements and your vehicle is well maintained, you can keep it going. That we can factor that. We certainly can factor that in. No, I guess the question back to you, Megan, is it meets mileage? Is it still at or under its years? Because if it's at or under its years, we probably can make the case to keep it going. If it's over its years, but still it has less mileage, then we can look at it, add and over. Okay. We'll have to make a decision on a case-by-case basis. I mean, as we get out there, we don't know what's going on when it comes to your vehicle records. What's going to happen is we're going to budget and say we're going to replace, based off funding, we can budget 5 vehicles per year, and we'll allocate that appropriately to the agencies with the need that year, and then it's up to the agency to decide what vehicle gets replaced. Is probably the best way to answer your question. Again, we need to see the inventory to really best make that assessment. This is a group plan, so we have to standardize everything across all the participants. We have to treat everybody equal, every agency equally. So I hope that answers your question. What happens if you have a lemon? That probably requires greater coordination with FTA and altitude testing and your whatever is in your asset, your acquisition, your procurement policy. So, okay, I'm going to jump on here. So, what are the different responsibilities involved here? Again, so as the sponsor, it is our in-house responsibility to develop the execution of the TAM plan. It's our responsibility to develop a centralized database for how you're going to do this. We coordinate with the accountable executives and we provide access to the plan. So basically, in-house responsibility is we're going to create a mechanism for you to report the information to us. We're going to send the information back out to you, you approve it, and then we go on there and make sure you have access to the entire process. As a participant, said, first on definitions, make sure you have an accountable executive. So that, again, in your job description for that position, it says the word accountable executive. And they have the authority to monitor the TAM participation and approve the group TAM plan, because every year we're going to submit the update out to you and you have to sign off on it and saying that those requirements were met. Provide accurate asset data. So submit the information to us in a timely manner on your rolling stock, equipment, and facilities, age, condition, location, usage, and other information about the assets. Coordinate whatever, respond to our emails, come to meetings, coordination, and maintain those internal records throughout the year. Here's the overall timeline.
Hey, Brian, can you back up one slide? Because I got a question on the side.
Yes.
So for the accountable executive, one of the questions I got was, even though they're not the accountable executive, they are the transit managers. Yes, we can add you on the notification. So if, like, for instance, your mayor is listed as the accountable executive because they are the decision maker they're the ones that signing your agreements and all those things. that's fine, but they just need to understand that we will need to get a response from them. We can still put you on our distribution list to be included when those emails are sent out so that you can monitor that. But whoever is listed as that accountable executive, they are the ones that would have to respond. The other question I got was regarding the condition, asset aging condition. Yes, I'll get to that later today, but NDOT will be out to do condition assessments this year. And like I said, I'll touch on that later, but it will not just be for rolling stock. It will be for rolling stock, and then those that have federally funded facilities, we will do a condition assessment on the facility as well. I think that's all I have. I think these ones are repeats. Yep.
Okay. It's bouncing back and forth here, so my computer. Let me stop sharing this real quick. Hold on one second. I think I confused it. Hold on. Let's try that again. Let's do it here. And then okay. Is that a question for you, Sarah? How about?
Yes, so my staff will be physically coming out to look at them. They will let you know when they're going to be in that vicinity. I think the goal is to start trying to get out there next month. Hope Cohen, George, sorry, that came out too fast. The condition assessments I don't think will take too long. If the vehicles are not on site, let's say they're out in the field, we will mark that on our sheet, and we'll figure out a ways that we can get that addressed, because we don't want you to not go out and run your routes just because we're going to do a condition assessment. So we're not going to interrupt any of your business, day-to-day business, but we're going to try and get there. Maybe we just need to get there earlier before you guys take off. We'll work through that. And Lois, to your point, yes, if you have a federally funded facility, we will do a condition assessment on that. If you do not have a federally funded facility, then I'm not going to do one.
Okay. Here's the rough timeline for everything. So, right now we're identifying the participants. So this week, next week, we'll have emails, get that finalized. We know who's participating in the group plan. Once we have that final list, we will then send out we'll prepare the spreadsheet that we'll want you to fill out with your assets. Once we have that back to us, we'll be working with NDOT staff to kind of start laying out the plan, looking at the funding streams, the prioritization, and setting the appropriate targets. And then we'll hopefully start engaging with you again back in the spring with the actual targets, draft plan, and then the plan approval. And the goal is for the final approval by August by all accountable executives, for submission to FTA by October. So I guess, Cindy, I'll answer again, back to what Sarah said. If there's federal transit dollars associated with that building, then the answer would be yes.
And Cindy, you particularly, I don't see you on my list as any FTA funds in that facility, so no.
Okay. All right. There are some tools and resources out there that can help us out here. There is the FTA template. It's actually template. What's nice about this is we can log in. We can create a draft TAM plan through the FTA site. It will grab the previous annual report and start populating the fields for us. It gives us a little bit of a head start, and we can then cross-verify with the participants. There's a really good sponsored workbook out there that you can grab and look at everything that needs to be done. There's the TermLite software, which helps to assess your buildings. And then there's the overall prioritization tool, which helps with the prioritization process based on funding streams. So FTA has done above and beyond what is necessary to make this thing as user-friendly as possible, with many tools out there, resources out there that we'll be tapping into to get this thing done. So, and there are the next steps. The email to participate in, to opt in, to kind of get an idea of what assets you have and who that accountable executive is. Like I said numerous times, and then kind of start preparing and gathering the data, which we'll send out the spreadsheet to you next month. And that concludes my presentation. Any other questions of me?
I did get a question in my email. So if you did provide us that form when you applied for federal funds this round and you had somebody listed as your accountable executive and you want to change it, just let me know. I will send you out a new form and you can have that signed and we'll just adjust that. But this just goes back to what I said earlier. We can include you on there, but ultimately the response has to come from that accountable executive. Now, if we get going and that person changes midway through this TAM update, please let us know as soon as possible so that we can make sure our distribution list is up to as current as possible. I'm looking to see if I have any others. I think those were the only ones I've gotten so far. Yes, I think that's all. And this will be this presentation was recorded as well. So we correct, Lisa, I believe this was also recorded. So we'll send all of this out at the end or probably sometime this week.
And again, the important takeaway is, so go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, it's been one recording so far.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Just to end with, it's been, again, it can make sure it's clear that the big thing is, of course, is vehicles. We will most likely develop a hybrid approach that factors in both the age and the mileage to factor in the daily conditions. What the hybrid approach looks like will need to be determined later, and we'll definitely keep that process open and transparent on what it will look like. I agree, it should not be one or the other. It should be a combination of the two.
All right. I don't see any other questions coming in. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you jumping on and going through that.